as to the charge of aggravated manslaughter of a child. Verdict is to count 3. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. So say we all, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, this 5th day of July, 2011, signed foreperson.
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's episode of Acquitted. Tonight we're looking into perhaps one of the most infamous acquitted cases of the 21st century, the case of Casey Anthony. If you're not familiar with the details of this case, check out this brief synopsis.
On July 15, 2008, 2-year-old Caylee Anthony was reported missing by her grandmother, Cindy Anthony, after she had not seen her granddaughter for an entire month. Before long, Casey Anthony, Caylee's mother, became the prime suspect in the case of the missing child. On December 11, 2008, Caylee's skeletal remains were found in a trash bag in a wooded area in close proximity to the Anthony family home. Casey Anthony pleaded not guilty to a charge of first-degree murder, initially lying to detectives and saying that her daughter had been kidnapped by a nanny, and later changing her defense and arguing that Caylee's grandfather, George Anthony, had disposed of Caylee's body after she drowned in the family pool. The highly publicized trial lasted 6 weeks, with viewers getting involved through social media and even in person at the courthouse and the family home. Time magazine deemed it the social media trial of the century.
I met her through my roommate Anthony Lazaro after a birthday party for a friend Daniel Howard.
Do you remember when that party was?
I believe it was May 24th, or around that date. That's when his birthday was.
And Mr. Howard is a friend of yours? What is or was a friend of yours?
Yes, he was a mutual friend with all of us.
When you first met Ms. Anthony, can you tell the jury how she appeared, what her demeanor was?
She was, just a regular 22-year-old girl, happy. Just seemed like, normal, and just your average 22-year-old.
We caught up with Dr. Kira Page to learn more about the case and trial of Casey Anthony.
The prosecution introduced a number of text messages sent from Casey's phone that highlight her motive to kill her daughter. It was motivated by her desire to spend more time with her boyfriend and to participate in Florida's party scene. Assuming that she did murder her daughter, she consciously decided to employ gas cans to kill Caylee, and later chose to dispose of the body in a nearby field. Because she chose a life without Caylee over a life with her, Casey Anthony exhibited free will, which supports rational choice theories, which assume a level of rationality among criminals and argue that one's decision to commit a crime is greatly impacted by free will and the reasoning process.
In a pattern that is repeated throughout this case, when Casey Anthony's lie can no longer stand, when she can't get out of the corner that she has painted herself into, when her back is up against the wall, and when the stakes increase, what does Casey Anthony do? What does she do? Casey Anthony comes up with a new, a bigger, and a better lie.
In cases tried by a jury, a court shall conduct proceedings to the maximum extent practicable in such a manner as to prevent inadmissible evidence from being suggested to the jury by any means. Based on that, we reassert our motion to preclude any mention of the shovel.
We were lucky enough to gain an inside look at the scene where Caylee's remains were found. We met with Detective Wendy Lau for an exclusive access to the crime scene. Can you tell us a little bit more about what we're looking at?
Yeah. We are currently on the scene where we uncovered Caylee Anthony's remains. Her skull was found a near 19 feet away from the road, which as you can see is only steps away from a high-traffic street. This wooded area is located near the Anthony home, and in the brush, we recovered human remains and duct tape with pink lettering. Analysis on the insects found in Kaylee's skull support the theory that the remains were in Casey Anthony's car before being disposed of. Other evidence uncovered in Anthony's car proved that the decomposition fluid from human remains were found in paper towels located inside of her trunk. We believe that Kaylee's remains were here for multiple months before being disposed.
I understand how that's difficult both for you as well as the public to believe that she doesn't have an access to disorder. I've seen on your show as well as some of the other shows on your network individuals coming on and making references to her as either a psychopath or a sociopath. One of the reasons that Casey actually authorized me to go public with the results of my evaluation was because she wanted it known to the public, both the good and the bad of Casey. But I think Casey feels that, and for obvious reasons, that the public has really only seen part of who Casey Anthony really is.
Many people thought that Casey Anthony had some form of mental illness. However, she was psychologically evaluated and deemed competent to stand trial. Nonetheless, Casey Anthony may meet the criteria for sociopaths, since all sociopaths are criminal by definition. Sociopathic tendencies are rooted in inadequate socialization and hostile childhood experiences. Casey Anthony claimed that she was molested by her father as a child, and this may have contributed to her development as a sociopath. As Walsh says, while psychopaths and sociopaths may be morally insane, they are not mentally ill.
In the Circuit Court for the 9th Judicial Circuit in and for Orange County, Florida, State of Florida versus Casey Marie Anthony. As to case number 2008 CF 15606-0. As to the charge of first-degree murder, verdict as to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of aggravated child abuse, verdict as to count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of aggravated manslaughter of a child, verdict as to count 3, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of providing false information to a law enforcement officer, verdict as to count 7, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of providing false information to a law enforcement officer as charged in the indictment. So say we all, dated Orlando, Orange County, Florida, this 5th day of July, 2011, signed foreperson.
We pulled aside Morgan Bird, one of the protesters from the trial. Here's a look at why she's protesting the acquittal.
I don't see why everyone isn't protesting this. The jury had no guts today. I will not stop until we get a retrial and Kaylee gets justice. The defense says that she was accidentally drowned in a swimming pool, but what the prosecution said about the duct tape has to be true. Casey had to strangle her daughter and suffocate her with the duct tape. There needs to be a retrial, and we have to get justice today, and I will not stop or leave this courthouse until there is justice.
Protesters reacted negatively to the news of Casey Anthony's acquittal because they believe she was responsible for her daughter's murder. Although she was acquitted by the jury, she had already been labeled as guilty in the eyes of the public. The heavy media coverage of her trial only reinforced the public perception of Casey Anthony as a criminal. Labeling theories of crime emphasize how people's reactions to deviant behavior shape what is considered to be criminal. This means that once Casey Anthony was arrested, she was deemed a criminal by the criminal justice system, which is an irreversible label in spite of the fact that she was acquitted.
Following Casey Anthony's release, we had a chance to catch up with her defense attorney, Lexi Cadis, to discuss why she was acquitted and what this means for the criminal justice system.
This trial required the prosecution to rely heavily on circumstantial evidence. Today was a win for the criminal justice system, not in the sense that a potential murderer could have walked free, but because of the fact that the jurors listened solely to the evidence presented in court and not to the media. This non-guilty verdict showed that the prosecution must prove every piece of evidence and every aspect of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt in order to receive a guilty verdict from the jury. For Casey Anthony and for any future defendants who are convicted of crimes without sufficient evidence, know that the law is on your side. I have no further comments at this time.
Kaylee would be 12 this year.
What would she be like right now?
A total bad. I would like to think she'd be listening to classic rock and playing sports and not taking from anybody.
These days, Anthony lives and works with Patrick McKenna, the private detective who was the lead investigator on her defense team. She says she tries to live a normal life, staying under the radar, adding,
I don't give a about what anybody thinks about me. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I never will. I'm okay with myself. I sleep pretty good at night.
In the interview, Casey says she keeps her bedroom decorated with photos of Kaylee, openly weeping when she showed off colorful, finger-painted artwork by her daughter.
This famous trial gained a vast amount of media attention, and even today many people feel Casey Anthony is guilty and should be in prison. Her acquittal is explained by the criminal justice system requirement to prove every case beyond a point of reasonable doubt. Consider this and tell us if you think Casey Anthony should have been acquitted. Contact us via Twitter at @AcquittedCriminals.
Well, in Florida, we've always had cameras, and I think people need to know how their justice system works, and that's the only way it can work.
You look at somebody like Casey Anthony, she's out, she's been acquitted, she's free under the law, and yet she lives in hiding. She can't really go anywhere. She apparently can't make a living. In your mind, has justice been served to her?
Well, justice has been served in the sense that the jury has spoken, but justice will finally be served one day by the judge of judges. And she's going to have to live with this and deal with this for the rest of her life.